It's that time again. Drew Hopkins, Jerris Johnson here. It's the Real Deal Landman Show. We are so excited that you would join us for yet another week. We are one show away from the season finale of Landman on Paramount Plus. We're going to do things a little bit different today. First off, this is the first show of the new year. We've got Steve Smith with us this week. Jerris, Steve, Happy New Year to you guys. And
Happy New Year. Yeah.
Very, very glad to see you all. It's a cold day here in Oklahoma City. The high temperature has been 18 degrees the last 2 days. So this is a little different for Oklahoma for sure. How about where you guys are at right now?
It's 30 and sunny, but we had some snow yesterday. It was a little chilly this morning, but all in all, not too bad.
I'm in Lafayette, Louisiana. And it's 40.
So what's cold for Lafayette for you guys?
It's cold for a high, and the low is, I think, 28.
Oh my God, okay.
Yeah.
Not bad. Well, kicking off that new year, did we get all the food and drink that we needed to start the new year off? Do we have any New Year's resolutions that we need to kick this cast off with?
I mean, it's already January 8th. I didn't make a resolution yet. Honestly, it's probably too late in the year to even start. Maybe
probably
next year.
You could maybe start for next year. We can write some stuff.
More low.
It's too far gone. Yeah.
That's right. That's exactly right. Well, we had the New Year's resolution to change things up on the format just a little bit. And so we wanted to just go open right up with talking about the episode that we just saw. Jerris, do you know the name of this episode? We named it something a little bit different, but I think we've taken liberties with every one of these different names.
So the official title of the episode was WolfCamp. And depending on which website or who you're trying to get information from, it's unclear as if it is WolfCamp, 2 words, WolfCamp, 1 word, WolfCamp with capital W, capital C, because the reality is that the people who made the show and most people watching the show have no idea what the WolfCamp really is.
Right. Exactly right. Well, we kick off that show and there was so much that was going on. We've got the cartel tie-in of cartel members are getting blown up by Army Rangers. Tommy's telling them it's no big deal. We're going through Angela's doing things with the old folks home again, as she tends to do, trying to, number one, get the elderly as intoxicated as possible. And now a new twist, trying to take them to an adult entertainment center. So good for her and good for everybody at Shady Acres. That's exciting for everybody, right?
So Drew, you like picking out every week. You like picking out this is going to be the viral clip that everybody will share on LinkedIn.
Right.
What was this week's viral clip?
There's no
that everybody's going to be sharing. Why did you love it so much?
There's no question what it was. And I'll tell you, I'm 100% in the wrong on this because as I told Jerris whenever I was watching it, I did not like this, and everybody else did like this. Jerry Jones, owner of the Dallas Cowboys, making evidently the internet loved it, said it was an amazing cameo, said he cried on command, like he delivered this amazing acting performance. Let me tell you what I saw from my view.
Okay, let's hear your rant.
And Tommy goes in like this room where Monty has had like a heart attack, like a triple bypass or whatever. What do we say? This is third heart attack or fourth?
Third bypass. Yeah.
Third bypass. And Tommy goes in there and the owner of the Dallas Cowboys is sitting in this man who has just had his third bypass, his recovery room. And he's just waxing poetically about family and leasing acres, and he looks like he has escaped from one of the other maybe floors of the hospital. And the thing that I was dying at the most was John Hamm. If you go back and look at that, he has the most confused look on his face. Like the first 2 or 3 times the camera cuts to him, and it was the best part of the series, hands down. I cannot just love this more. this is the viral moment of this show right now, and everyone needs to be talking about it. But I will say, I loved it because I thought it was so bad, and everything I read online was people were like, Jerry Jones is offering a master class in acting, and so what do I know? What do I know?
Do you think it was scripted, or do you think they just hit record and told him, hey, just tell us lessons of life for an hour, and then they just edited it down to what it was?
I'll tell you, that's a really good question. So I'm sitting there with my wife, and I was like, there's absolutely no way. They could have given him like 2 or 3 talking points, like, make sure you end with this line or something, like with the family, because I don't know that Jerry's going to be mentioning family. I think he's going to be talking about the Cowboys season or coaching changes or something like that, right? Like, I think he's happy to be there, but I think getting that man to follow a script would be pretty difficult. Steve, chime in here if you think any different. What did you think of this?
Well, it's funny. I actually spent 30 minutes on his jet alone with him.
Did you really?
Yeah. Several years ago.
And we're done talking about the show. Like, this is so much more interesting.
My feedback on that scene, I want you to know, I thought he was fantastic. Greatest actor I've seen, and deserves all the accolades.
Yeah, your best friend did awesome.
Yeah, well, I've always been a Cowboys fan, but his guys that work for him were in Denver. They were selling a deal, wanted us to look at it, and after the meeting's over, they just said, do you want to meet Jerry? I said, yeah, where is he? And they said, he's at the airport, told me to go. I drove there, drove up to the plane. He gets out of his car, comes to me, shakes his hand, and introduces himself, which I was pretty impressed. Now, going into this, I was neutral on Jerry. Some people liked it. I just didn't know. But I thought his persona would be more like Trump is publicly. And so he invited me on his plane. We had a drink, talked for 30 minutes because the other guys didn't get there. And I walked away pretty impressed. He was humble. We talked about the value, the Cowboy, what he purchased it for versus what it's worth. And he said, it wasn't me, it was TV rights. They just blew up, told me a story about when he and the owner of the Broncos, Pat Bowlen, were in New York at Fox Studios, and they slid a piece of paper across the table with a number on it. And he said, my shins were bleeding from Pat kicking me under the table. It was such a big number. So we talked for what, very personable. I mean, he won me over because, like I said, I was a skeptic that he was, but he is. And, he could have told me, wait in the car till the guys get here. I've got business, but invited me in, super guy. So, I mean, when I saw him acting, I thought I was pretty impressed as well, Drew. I thought great job.
I've only ever been in the wrong 1 or 2 times in my life before, so this is a very new experience for me. I'm just eating. It's just kind of a hat in hand. I'm going to have to go to Jerry Jones and apologize. So, and the worst thing that probably came out of the episode was Jerry was probably the last person really to talk to Monty before he may have passed away. I don't know. Spoiler.
We don't know. We don't know.
We don't know that. So, all the best to Monty and Demi Moore. That may go with your theory of thinking that Demi might take over the company. I don't know. We're going to find out on the season finale. But the thing that I thought, honestly, about this episode that was most interesting to me was it was the first time I thought the title of Landman, I thought it made sense because remember we talked about Billy Bob's character, Tommy, being more of kind of that like drilling engineer, or like he was a kind of a man of production engineer, like all sorts of hats.
A VP of operations.
VP of operations. He did get the promotion. Congratulations to him. Air Defense Minister. I mean, would he fall under that too? Now that he's kind of helping operate neither here nor there. But at the very end of the show, we see Cooper, his son, actually taking on that landman role and going out and doing what I honestly thought would be hit within the show long before now. But I was glad that they waited this long to do it, of showing that first interaction of going out. And especially it's kind of cool, like seeing a young landman and he's going out. Number one, and you guys can explain this to me because I just couldn't understand, is Number one is, where is he getting the funding to do this? Like, is he
That's
bankrolled by
yeah.
anything? And number two, I thought his negotiation skills were absolutely fantastic. Whenever the landowner was like, I'm going to want 25 or 20%. And he was like, I'll tell you what, I'll meet you in the middle at 25 or whatever. You know, he hikes it up, and I was like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Where are you getting this money from, and how are you making these deals? So,
And is he going to buy that lease without doing title first?
yeah, I bet he is,
because they went inside to sign everything, and as far as I know, there's no title that's been done.
Straight inside, we're going to do this over a cup of coffee. And he's the landman now. But all that to say, I do think it is kind of cool. Like, if it has been kind of a long push, and maybe this is kind of more of a title role of shifting more of the focus to be Cooper and his journey to become like this, oil and gas leader, and starting with this landman role and being able to go out, and how he's putting together these units, and how he's pooling everything together, and how he's trying to get in the WolfCamp and all that stuff. And like, that was the most interesting thing to me, aside from Gerald Jones breaking in a hospital.
So speaking of promotions being made from the hospital bed, how is this going to go down to where your new VP of exploration was an attorney?
That was a hard one.
And how many aspiring geologists out there were hoping that one day they could become a VP of exploration, but now they've learned that the fast track is actually a law degree.
Or if you have a law degree, maybe, but no, not geology. Yeah, that was interesting. I like that, just the fact of now it kind of gives Rebecca a little bit more layers of, she's been in Midland for the entire duration of the show, just being kind of a decent lawyer, and now they just think the world of her negotiating skills, even though she's kind of like one for one basically. And so, yeah, shoot, get that promotion. That's fantastic. Good for her.
Now that she's an employee, does she get to move into the house with Dale and Nate and Tommy and his family?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that house is very functional. And Angela always, there is no way that Angela doesn't have a live, laugh, love, one of those Hobby Lobby paintings, like in the kitchen. Like, that hasn't been shown yet, but I guarantee you that's there. And Angela, I'm really hoping that the story arc for her, I like where Cooper's story arc's going. Angela's story arc, I really hope that in the final episode, prediction time for both of you guys, I think Angela will get kidnapped by the cartel at the beginning of the episode, and then at the end of the episode, I think they will return her, because it's Angela. So I think that's where we're going with all this, and that will be a wrap. But predictions aside, what we want to do today is we want to talk to Steve. And Jerris, you and Steve have worked together a little bit. Like, I'm gonna let you do the intro here.
Sure, glad to do it. So so we've got Steve Smith with us. So first of all, I'm going to put Steve on the spot, which is something I like doing to people. I know that Steve can take it. I don't know how many Steve Smiths there are that are in the industry, and particularly in the landman profession, but you're not the only Steve Smith I've ever known.
That's right.
So right out of the gate, Steve Smith from Lafayette, tell us what distinguishes you from other Steve Smiths. How would we tell you apart from the other Steve Smiths that are in the AAPL directory?
My middle name is unusual. It's Knox, Knox, but that's, and legally that's what I try to sign everything because of that reason. The name is actually on the do not fly list. So yes, it is. So flying into the country, flying out's no problem. But when you come back in, I have a redress number, they call it, and I have to give to, I always get detained, and then I give them the redress and they let me go. But there's a multitude of problems with the name, but some of it's comical, some of it's not. But I don't know what distinguishes me, probably. I guess there's only one Steve Smith from Lafayette. So,
okay. Have you lived in Lafayette your whole life?
I grew up here, went to college here, but out of college, there just wasn't work here. You know, oil was $10 a barrel in 1983. And so I moved to Denver and stayed busy. through the 80s. So moved around Denver, Farmington, New Mexico, where Jerris and I worked, and then Denver. So I moved around 4 or 5 times.
From Lafayette, what was your major in college? PLM? Okay. And
did you go there? Did you go to ULala?
No, it was USL, University of Southwestern Louisiana. Yeah.
And they had a PLM program?
Yeah. Started in 81, maybe one.
Some new trivia.
So back in 81, what was the draw? Like what drew you to it? Did you see this industry kind of growing, or what was?
Well, both of my parents have worked for oil companies, so there was an interest there for that. I love geology, but not enough to be one. So I don't have enough flannel shirts, so but yeah, it's worked out perfect. I think dealing with people is, the thing that a lot of us like, and the job is so diverse. You work with units, you work with surface, it's so varied on what you can do. And some people are fortunate to see it all, and some people, just do surface agreements or just do title or leasing. But I've been fortunate that I've got exposed to a lot of things, which I like because it, that variation doesn't get boring.
What do you get to spend most of your time on now? Would you say you're doing in-house work, or would you say you're doing field work?
I a couple of years ago thought I was going to retire, and after about 6 months, I realized, you don't work for 40 something years and just turn the switch off. You
That's
can't
right.
coast into, I thought I could coast into retirement. You can't really, it's like the hard brakes were on. And somebody called me and just said, "Are you busy?" And I said, "No," and just started working and realized how much I liked it. I don't want to get to the point like we all have been where you're stressed, but the work for the last couple of years has been great. People are great. And I'm upfront with them. I'll just tell them, I'm happy to work for you until you raise your voice. And then,
good to be the place in your career to where, just something as simple as that, you can be like, I just want to do it because I enjoy it.
Yeah. And it's, and I do some in-house work. There's some guys that call me when their work is too much and they're overloaded, and they say, "Can you review this JOA and these assignments and check them?" So there's things like that. But I do. I've done some leasing. I've done some lithium mining claims. Which is a little different than what I've done in the past, but I enjoyed learning something new.
Somebody who might be working lithium or wants to work lithium, what do they need to know to make that transition?
On fee lands, I'm far from any kind of expert. On federal lands, it was like day one of being a landman. I've dealt with the BLM for years, and on the oil and gas side, they have, their own rules. You have operating rights, you have a record title, and you've got to know that and when to file it and record it, whatever you do. But on the mining side, the mining laws go back, they're over 100 years old. You just have to learn that. And so I read what I could. I called people asking them, the BLM was pretty helpful. When I had a question, I was upfront. I said, "Look, I'm a landman, but I have no idea what the process is." Mining claims, I guess in the last few years have just skyrocketed. So the BLM was inundated with claims. So, but I thought it was fascinating to learn something new.
So, and has the BLM, are they you said that they've skyrocketed the claims. Is the BLM poised to handle that? Like, have they ramped up their staffing or special department or something?
And maybe with the new administration, they may allocate more funds to the BLM for that. Especially if I guess there's any kind of royalties coming in associated with the mining. But I think this was my take when I talked to the BLM. I was very sympathetic because they're not staffed to handle the amount of claims. I mean, I submitted over 3,000 claims. So that's just me. And the guys I'm working for aren't, the biggest ones filing claims. So they've got thousands. And I think because the mining industry set kind of dormant since the last boom of maybe uranium or potash. So now it's taken off, and I don't know if they didn't see it or they just weren't able to adjust. But it's, like I said, I'm sympathetic that they weren't staffed, but they're doing a great job. And like I said, they're very helpful to kind of get me up to speed.
So something else I wanted to ask about, and with your career and all the different things that you've done, I think you would have some perspective with it. There's a lot of guys who get into the business either intentionally or accidentally, and they start off doing field work or independent landman work because that is their foot in the door. What they really crave, though, is they want to be in that in-house spot, and they want to be in that corporate environment and do the things that come along with that. Do you have advice or ideas or suggestions on how somebody can make that transition from working in the field to going in-house? And like in your positions in the past as a hiring manager or somebody who might have had the opportunity to help somebody, what are the kinds of things that you would look for in an individual that said, hey, I've been leasing for 20 years, but I feel like I could do so much more in-house in the corporate realm. How do I do that?
Well, I like people that want to learn, and that's what I encourage them to do. That's kind of what I did, is I went to all the seminars I could go to learn. And, that you don't want the guy who has been working 5 years, but acts like he knows it all, because he doesn't. You want the guy who's worked 5 years and says, look, I've got good experience, but I want more. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to learn. So being constantly hungry for knowledge is the kind of people, because I think the tendency with young people is to come in thinking they want to impress what they know, and that's fine. But I think they should also impress, I want to know more, though. I know this much, but I realize there's a whole world out there I don't know about the land business. So those are the kind of people, in this business, you never quit learning. I never, every day I'm like, wow, I didn't know that. Like the mining stuff I talked about, I know it's a little out of our wheelhouse. It's a little different, but it's still the BLM. And I thought it would be so similar, but it's so different. I would encourage young people or people getting in the business, just learn what you can, any experience. If someone calls you, hey, can you do this? Do it. Everything helps.
Were there any good, like we've talked everything from like NAPE to a lot of different other AAPL conferences and everything. Were there any conferences that you would also kind of throw in that bucket of being like, hey, make sure you put these on your list, or like professional organizations to be a part of?
I mean, definitely the local associations, the APL, of course, but the ones I think that helped me, the JOA schools were always beneficial. And I've no less than 3 or 4, especially when the new forms came out, I'd always go. And for some reason, that's a document that you don't learn it until it happens. Then they say, what do we do when? And then you go, I better go read it, because what happens when you've had the experience. So that's one of them. Federal units, if you're in the West, that's a good one if you're working in the West. And the other one is just the CPL exam. Even if you're not qualified to take it, or you don't want to take it, take that course. It's educational. It helps.
I was going to say, throughout your career, you've got to do field, you've got to do in-house, you've got to become best friends with Jerry Jones, evidently, and get on his jet. Was there any field experiences, or was there any in-house experiences that were just kind of pivotal parts of your career, or anything that we watch the Landman show and we see him, he's negotiating with the cartel. It's very, outworldly of the experiences that they have because they make it glamour, for Hollywood. Did you have any experiences that you look back on and you kind of chuckle, or that you're just like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that happened?
Oh, most of them have been. I mean, of course, we all have office episodes that you laugh about, but most of the neat things are in the field. And even when I worked in house, if I had the opportunity, I would go lease or go run title. Now, it's not always possible. Projects are too big. I've worked cattle with a guy. He said, "Yeah, come on out, but I'm working cattle, so wear your boots." And so I go out there and work cattle with the guy. So and all that helps. And when I saw that episode where Coop goes out to the farm, he's in the barn, and it reminded me of when I went out there and the guy's coming out of a barn. He's got all these cattle pinned up, and we got to move them. So it's just stuff like that. I met so many just down to earth people. Now there are some ornery people in the world, but that's everywhere. But for the most part, they're just down to earth. They're great people. I've spent a lot of time in Montana and Kansas in the field, some in Colorado a little bit, but mostly just country people that welcome you into their home and feed you and see if you want to work out.
I think it's really interesting. I thought you were talking about you saw the Landman episode that we had done talking about Larry Coach, where he was going to sign a lease with someone, and that guy, what was he doing? He was running harvest. Isn't that right, Jerris?
Yeah.
And on a combine, and he said, well, I'll get up on one and we'll finish it quicker if it's two of us. That I like that we've only done 8 episodes of this, and we've had 2 different landmen experiences where they were like, yeah, I'll go out and I'll, run cattle, or I'll help with harvest. And I think that would be a very high percentage of the people in these fields that do have that personal relationship with the people that they're working with. And it's not just I'll do this because of me trying to seal a deal. It's me doing this because of the type of character that they are. And I think that speaks very highly. That's one thing.
And I was in-house at the time.
Okay.
So, there's always leases toward the end of a project that you couldn't secure. So I would go out and, sometimes you got to work it a couple, you go out one day and they're busy, and then you come back a week later and they'll talk to you. But, that's probably been the best part of the job. Now there's, the in-house stuff is very rewarding, closing deals and negotiating and just working with people. But, some of the fun times, I just enjoy that too.
What Steve is trying not to talk about, but does want to talk about, is that when we were working together, The Office, like the show The Office, was just coming out. And we would Steve had the very first video iPod I'd ever seen. And he was downloading episodes of The Office as they would come out. And like during lunch, we would go through which I've never seen this before other than in Farmington, but they had a Subway drive-through. And so we would go through the Subway drive-through, and then we would huddle up around his little video iPod and watch the latest episode of The Office and laugh about how real it was for the scenario that we were currently living in.
Well, and if you remember, I don't know if you remember this, that year they were drilling and recompleting over 400 wells.
Yeah.
Remember that? So we were working pretty hard and weekends and nights. So on the weekends, if we worked, we'd get pizza or Subway, and then we'd take a break and eat and watch. But, Jerris knows work doesn't, you have to get your work done, but that doesn't mean you can't have fun. And I've always, you spend in a lot of guys, more time at the office than you are with your family. And so do you want to be unhappy most of your life? So Jerris knows this about me. We had fun, and we got our job done. And that's what I always, impressed upon people is, you have one job and that's to get it done, but there's no reason you can't have fun.
One of
So,
my favorite, one of my favorite work memories was one of those Saturdays that we were there at the office. And it was a team effort. We were trying to crank out as many, whatever the TPS report acronym was at the time, but we were trying to get as many of those as we could done, because we had to feed the machine. There was 400 or 500 that was going to be drilled that year, and they needed our clearance from it. And we had like pizzas. I think
do you
we
remember
had
the movie
college
we watched?
football playing, and it was
Napoleon
fun.
Dynamite.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's the first time I'd seen it. You had talked about it. I'm like, yeah, it can't be that funny. It was hilarious. I just love it. It was great.
Yeah. Which do you like working more, fee lands or federal lands?
Probably fee. Federal, because you're dealing with the BLM. But you have the whole going to a lease sale thing. That's in the old days. You actually physically went to a sale. Now it's online, I guess. But I think still fee is better because of the interaction with people. It's not always good. I had my problems with people, but like we all have. But like I said, most people are just great. Entertaining.
You talk about going to those sales like in person, and then now everything's online, and we see such a shift now. 2025 is opening up, and I see so many different companies implementing AI, and land departments are one of those ones where title and everything is really there's going to be a lot of things done artificially. I guess what I'm trying to say is, are you at all worried for the landman job of the future, or do you think that there's still going to be that personal element that's going to hold true?
There will be always. It just for negotiating. I think title isn't always black and white. You're still going to have to interpret or make a guess. The mineral owner isn't going to want to talk to a machine, or it's just, you're always going to need somebody. Now, what I'm impressed with is, when I started, and this will date me, but I remember Larry was talking about this on your episode, having a typewriter. Well, I had the Cadillac because I had I think it was an IBM Selectric. It was a ball instead of the keys, and it had autocorrect on it. Or not autocorrect, but
not autocorrect, but yeah, you could hit a delete key.
Okay. So, and that's I had that and a box with files in it, pad of leases, and that was what you traveled around buying leases, and you had to do your own maps. So much has changed. And Larry's comment about going to the street with the phone booth, that is no lie. The hotel I was in was a party line. So
everybody pick up and somebody else is already using it.
Yep. And I found that out the hard way. You pick up the phone and some guy's on it. So I had to, in the cold at night, go with a pocket full of change with my legal pad and call people, just throwing quarters and dimes in the phone booth. But the neat part is, not, I'm telling the war stories that, it's not woe me. I just love that. That's awesome. It's so impressive how much work we get done compared to what we did. And that'll lead me into why landmen should be paid more because they're doing exponentially more work. So what took me 4 hours to do, I can do in 30 minutes now. Now, a guy coming out of school right now doesn't have that perspective, but I'm telling you, I can do my own maps on a computer. It doesn't take me 2 days to draw a map like it used to and put ownership and percentages on it. When something that you paid a guy 2 days to do gets done in 30 minutes or an hour, you probably need to pay more. So relative. So that, we all know, I won't get into details about day rates, but, they just haven't changed much. Not in the last couple of years with inflation. So
would your solution for that be, do you think that day rates themselves should go up, or do you think that it should be like a paid per task or paid per job type scenario?
I think the the job part would be a little hard to, if you did that, a little hard to figure and estimate, but certainly day rates should go up.
Yeah.
Well over 10 years ago, when things ramped up, I was working in Denver. We started paying field guys $600, and we paid them on weekends, even though they weren't working. So just to, we had to pay them 2 days, $1,200 just to sit around on a weekend when they were out of town. And they've dropped back since then, I believe. I'm not totally, plugged into that. It's just the fact that work is getting done so much faster and better and more accurate, probably warrants it.
I think you have solidified, you have endeared yourself as probably the fan favorite of all of the listeners that listen in on this. As you are saying, let's pay these guys more. We're going to get more positive thumbs up comments. And Steve's
I like to think I have a good perspective, because I'm now essentially, I'm a contractor, a field guy, and I've worked in-house for probably 30 something years. So I've been on both sides of the table, and I understand the budget issue and companies trying to save money, but in the scheme of things, when you compare what the land contributes versus what it costs compared to, it's minute. So you give your guys a 30% raise, and it doesn't hit their financials like, 30% increase in rig costs,
Right.
So, and what I'm also worried about is long-term, people got into our business. They left being, smart people in other industries because it paid well. Well, if that doesn't move, there's nothing attracting people to this industry, and money's not the only factor, obviously, but, there's a lot of guys who jump in the business when they're 30 or 40, we've seen shortages of landmen.
Do you have kids in the business?
I do have one son, and the other one told me, hell no. I said, why? Because we move too much. So, yeah, I have a son who's in the business, and that was his choice. So, good for him. I've certainly enjoyed it. And I'll work till I can't. I don't. Some guys I know say, I'm quitting at 65. I'm quitting at 70. If I live to be 100, I'll still be working.
That's very, it's all do something you love. You never work a day in your life. And yeah, I've heard people not in this industry, there's ups and downs, but as you said before, the people that you work with, the satisfaction you get out of the job, and you see, an industry that you absolutely believe in. That's wonderful. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Have you ever put somebody in prison?
You had to ask that one, did you?
Well, yeah.
Notice I didn't. That was all Jerris, former coworker.
I didn't ask you to tell this. I just asked a yes/no question.
I'll just say, I'll put that in my book when I
there you go. Chapter 12, right there.
Yeah, it's a good story. In fact, the only way I'm telling anyone is if Taylor Sheridan shows up at my house, and I would tell him, I got an episode for you. So
if you can somehow fit Angela in there and her making paella and taking people to the strip club, I think we've got a hit on our hands, Steve.
No, leave that out. Leave that out.
And on that note, I'm kind of glad, like you said, they waited to put the land. I don't, and not to offend any landmen, but if they jumped out of the chute of this show with maps and farm outs and people don't know what so they're easing it in, but they need some sort of plot with characters and developing them, and talking about buying leases with the farmers not going to grab everyone's attention.
It's not
with a bunch of 90-year-olds. It will.
And yeah, there's the plug right there. Yeah, I can't tell you how many times I saw that online of people like good landmen that were like, I look at a computer screen for 8 hours a day. And he's like, I don't think a camera over my shoulder is going to be drawing in, big numbers. So
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah. I think if you were going to make TV show, well, I mean, obviously somebody did, but like the field landman job would be your drama series. Your office in-house job would likely be a comedy series because just of the characters and things that are said. Sometimes you have to ask yourself, is this real life?
Yeah. I'm really hoping he gets to a courthouse eventually, Cooper or whoever. I mean, like you were saying, Jerris, who's running title on this?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be a 30 minutes of the show, but something that shows that's part of what we do.
I'm believing that they will more and more. Like just like the little pieces, just like you said, they're kind of doing a slow burn with this. If they're showing the more mundane parts of it, I almost guarantee that they will. They seem to be kind of fitting that in when it makes sense. And that's pretty cool to be able to show off the different areas and different things that people are dealing with.
This one is one of those, I don't know, just coincidence stories that the small things in life sometimes are just funny. And I was leasing in Kansas, and this guy was a holdout. Very nice guy. We got along. He called me Smitty. He said, Smitty, I know I strung you out, but I'm going to go on vacation, and when I get back, I'll sign the lease. So I said, well, that works out because I'm going to be gone for a week too. So I fly to California, meet a couple of college buddies. I'm a couple of years out of college and single, and we're just going to, rent cars and, go to LA and have fun. Well, I'm at Universal Studios. I'm walking around and I hear, hey, Smitty. So this guy in the middle of Kansas, and I happened, without knowing, I didn't know where he was going here. We just happened to be going to Universal Studios on the same day at the same time.
That's crazy.
And, it's just one of those things. And at that moment, I knew he was going to sign the lease. I think he just got a tickle out of it.
Would have been even better if you pulled the lease out from your back pocket and had him sign it on the roller coaster or something, right?
Yeah. I've been carrying this along
at the Jaws exhibit. Yeah.
I have one of those astronaut pins so that you can still sign it on the loop-de-loop.
Waterproof leases. Yeah. So there's been stories like that are just entertaining. You meet people like that is just, you never expect.
I've been happier with the connections of. For me, it was royalty owners that even after they were getting paid by the company, they would call me to see whenever maybe they were getting the checks. And even if they were just minutely small, and it was because I think they enjoyed, they were enjoying just having a conversation because who knows when they were having them otherwise. And, just living kind of out in the middle of nowhere. And even after I had switched jobs and maybe be on a vacation or something, I'd still see a number come up on my phone and I'd pick up and I would have absolutely no idea what their royalty payments was, but it was always good to check in and hear. So it was good connections.
I haven't had many experiences like that, but it has been incredibly rewarding to be at a different job, doing something totally different and get a call from a past mineral owner, somebody who I dealt with and, would say, I don't work there anymore. And they're like, oh, I know. I just miss talking to you. I just want to see what was up. And, those are cool. That's a cool feeling. Those are cool moments when you were able to establish relationships, not only just for the credibility of the company you're representing, but for, your own individual persona as well. It feels good.
It does.
Experiences to make life, boys. That's what it is. Can't ever take any of those for granted.
No. And that's, the good part about having field experience. I needed it because in-house, it really benefits you. I mean, you understand their problems. You understand the time frame it takes when they tell you, look, I can't get the title done because And you go, yeah, I've done that. Okay. Yeah. So instead of saying, I don't care what it takes, you get it done. Well, at that point, it's just physically or humanly impossible. But just the people you meet, even the ornery ones are entertaining to me. They still, I left with a smile on my face and friends with them. But some guys, they just like doing that. They like being ornery and mean.
There was a guy, I mean, I was brand new. I think it was when I was doing field work when I was still in college. And I went out once to do a right-of-way agreement deal with a guy. And when I was out there on his property, I mean, I came from a blue-collar background, so I knew how to walk the walk and talk the talk a little bit. And as I was out there, he was, he started calling me his partner. Hey, partner, this, partner, that. And so we got the right-of-way agreement signed, and I paid him and everything. And several weeks later, he calls me, and he is just in an uproar. And he said, hey, did you know they were going to put 2 lines in this? That's not what we agreed. I thought this was just going to be for 1 line and 1 agreement, and they're putting 2 lines in. I said, I'm sorry, I didn't know anything about that, and he was fired off, was really fired up, got it all vented out of his system. He's like, well, you're still my partner, and hung up.
And I'm in a different part of the world now, but I started running title here, but really part-time in college as an internship, and then about a year out of college. But I've kind of gotten back into doing some work in Louisiana, so it's a different beast.
Any parting words of wisdom?
I'm just glad that through the ups and downs, people stay in the business. I realize some people can't, and they've got their own, factors in their life that keep them, that they have to move on. But there's a lot of, we're social animals, and I'd say 90% or better landmen just love people, and if they don't, they'll do fine. But I think that's what attracts us to it, is just the interaction. And that's mostly what we talked about today, is, just the interaction with people. We meet running across.
I can think of no better message than that, Steve. And I really appreciate you being on here today.
Sure.
And being
I was happy to.
I think it's more than anything, I think we have to take advantage for those connections that we made. I mean, if you're listening to this now, think about somebody from your past, whether that be an owner, whether that be just an acquaintance from work, whether that be, a mentor or somebody that you worked with. Shoot them an email if you haven't talked to them for a long time. Reconnect, share a few stories, and I guarantee your life will be happier for it. So
yeah.
I think we all should continue to be nostalgic for those good days and look forward to the other good ones ahead.
Does this count for me? Can I just
absolutely counts? I'm not calling anybody else.
I would rather not. If I can just count this with Steve, that'd be awesome.
No, I think that's perfect. You guys are out. I will say
resolution completed.
I will say I did it just for also everybody that's, listening or watching online. Landman Magazine did come out today, and got that at the desk. And I want you to know, as we talked about on our first episode, Jerris called me out and said, hey, whenever we had started the show, we said, obviously, we've got to be landmen to be able to do this. And I said, well, of course. Well, I hadn't renewed my membership for a while, and so I was not a landman. But I want you guys to know that on one of the back pages, when we're welcoming new members, right here in the middle, you can see Drew Hopkins from Oklahoma. I'm back on the roster, baby. And I'm going to be signing these at Nate, probably, I don't know, for a nominal fee. I haven't decided what that's going to be yet, but it's,
it all goes to charity.
You kind of remind me of Steve Martin in The Jerk.
Hey,
he got his name in the phone book. I'm famous.
I'm somebody. Well, there's a lot worse people I could be compared to Steve Martin. I like that guy.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
It is.
Steve, I hope you do make the trip down to Houston, and I hope we see you at Nate. This has really been a pleasure for Jerris, Drew Hopkins. This is the Real Deal Landman Show. We will see you next time for the season finale. I mean, that's big time. But the show's going to go on even afterwards. So
that's right.
Thanks, guys.
All right.
See you guys.
See ya.
All right.